James, is it really necessary to drive quite so fast?
More often than you...
Dear James, do you really need to drive that fast? More often than you. Pierce Brosnan is one of the most famous actors in Hollywood, but he's been hiding something from everyone for years. He hasn't talked about it in decades, until now. In a very emotional conversation, Brosnan talks about something he has kept secret his whole career. What has been hidden for so long? Come with us as we look into Pierce Brosnan's secret past, and find out what he's been hiding. A boy who doesn't have a father, and has big hopes. In the small Irish town of Drogheda, Pierce Brosnan was born on May 16, 1953. His early life was hard in many ways. Mae Smith, his mother, was only 19 years old when she had him. She got married to Thomas Brosnan, who is Brosnan's dad, just 9 months before. The marriage didn't last though. Thomas left his family when Pierce was very young. After the fact, Brosnan said he had only met his dad once, when he was 31 years old. After having a cup of tea together, and talking for a while, they went their separate ways. He could sing well and walk well. Pierce once said, "That's all I know about him." He had only that one moment with his father. Things got even worse after his father left. His mother had to make a hard choice. She went to London to become a nurse, so she could give her son a better life. Pierce was left in Ireland, and went to live with family there. He only saw his mother a few times a year, at most. It was a hard and lonely time. Pierce felt alone as a child, because he didn't have both parents. And in the 1950s, people looked down on Ireland, because she came from a broken home. He later said that he missed having a home, and being stable. Things changed, when Pierce was 11. There he lived with his mother, and her new husband, William Carmichael. It wasn't easy to get used to living in England. Being Irish made him stand out at school. Some kids made fun of him, and called him Irish. He had a hard time fitting in, but something good came out of that time of trouble. Pierce's stepfather, William, was kind to him, and made him feel like he was part of the family. William took Pierce to the movies one day, to see Goldfinger, a James Bond movie, with Sean Connery. Pierce's first memory of having a father figure, was that day. That movie was more than just fun to watch. He was deeply affected by it. He didn't know it at the time, but that day set a seed that would grow into something very big. He would go on to play James Bond himself, and he would become one of the most famous, 007 said ever. As a kid, Pierce didn't want to be an actor right away. He quit school when he was 16, and wanted to become a sign artist. He signed up to go to London's St. Martin's School of Art. He liked to draw and was good at it, and for a while it looked like this was his life's work. He had a great life, until one day he walked into a small theater, and saw a fire eater perform. That performance gave him a spark. He was interested in it for some reason. It was brave, exciting, and full of life. He felt drawn to the world of acting, all of a sudden. He went to the Drama Centre London, which is one of the best performing schools in the UK, because of that spark. The school was known for being very strict and difficult, and students were taught using a method-based approach. For Pierce, those years changed everything. He learned how to be disciplined, how to become a character, and most importantly, how to find his own style as an actor. There was more to the process than just learning lines. He had to figure out what he could do, and who he was. He later said that it gave him freedom, and a way to say what he wanted, which was something he had been looking for, since he was a kid, and lived alone. Brosnan started working in theater, after finishing in 1975. When he was cast in the British premiere of Tennessee Williams' famous play The Red Devil Battery Sign, it was his big break. Williams thought Brosnan did a great job that he sent him a message saying, "Thank God for you, my dear boy." It was a big deal for the young star. He was sure he was on the right track, after hearing praise from Williams. Following this, Brosnan quickly added a few more theater productions, and small TV parts. But when he got the lead part in the TV show Remington Steele, in 1982, it was a big moment in his career. People really liked the show. It was about a creepy and charming con artist, who pretends to be a detective, and works with a smart female detective. The person played by Brosnan was smooth, smart, and always dressed well. People loved him. He was funny, stylish, and had a great personality on screen that made him stand out. Remington Steele ran from 1983 to 1987, and made Brosnan famous all over the world. It also changed how people saw him as polished, sure of himself, and attractive. He later became perfect for the role of James Bond, because of these traits. But that was a long time before he wore the famous suit. Pierce Brosnan had clearly found his calling, and just as his career was taking off, Hollywood called with the part that he had missed the first time. A missed chance. He was only a few days away from becoming James Bond in 1986. The time he had dreamed about, since he was a child, was finally here, after years of hard work, and building his name. The producers of the Bond movies saw him in the hit TV show Remington Steele, and thought he would be great as 007, because of his charm, good looks, and confidence. Everything seemed to be going well for him, and he even did a screen test, where he wore a tuxedo, and held the famous gun, and gave a performance that impressed everyone. Behind the scenes, the Bond team was getting ready to announce him as the new James Bond. He was only a few days away from signing the contract, and becoming the next face of the franchise. Then though, something strange happened. NBC, the network that owns Remington Steele, made a last-minute choice right before the public announcement. They had already canceled the show, because it wasn't getting many viewers. But when word got out that Brosnan was going to play James Bond, the show became famous, all of a sudden. A lot of people wanted to see him on TV. NBC chose to bring Remington Steele back for a short season. Because of this, Brosnan had to go back to the show because it was in his deal. The people who make Bond movies couldn't wait for him. They didn't want people to think that James Bond was a TV figure. Thus they quickly changed their minds, and gave the part to Timothy Dalton instead. It was a terrible time for Brosnan. In the end he said it broke his heart. He had worked really hard, and just when it looked like it might happen, the chance was taken away. It was hard to watch someone else play James Bond, when you knew how close he had come. He didn't give up though. He kept playing, got better, and didn't give up. He was ready for another chance, if it came up. In 1994, 8 years later, that chance finally came back. There were no contracts in the way this time. Once more, the people who make Bond movies saw that Brosnan was the best person for the job. After 2 Bond movies, Timothy Dalton quit, and Pierce Brosnan was once again the choice for the role of James Bond. This time, it was impossible to stop. In 1994, Brosnan was publicly named as the new James Bond. It was a big deal for both him and the company that made the movies. He was 41 years old, and had the right amount of maturity, style and drive. Brosnan said that thinking about it now made him feel like a circle was ending. That part he almost lost for good was finally his. Having to wait for so long had made him stronger. He was now ready to play one of the most famous movie parts ever. After that, Bond looked like he had never looked before. You look cool, sure of yourself, and ready for a new era. The best time for Bond. James Bond hadn't been in a movie theater for 6 years when GoldenEye came out in 1995. Tim Dalton's License to Kill was the last movie. It came out in 1989. Many people have since then thought, if James Bond was still relevant in today's world, there was no longer a Cold War. What kind of action it was had changed, and people were used to seeing different kinds of heroes. Some reviewers said that the Bond movies were out of date and stuck in the past. Everything changed when GoldenEye came out. Bruce Willis brought James Bond back to life. It looked like the right size for the room, or maybe you got tired of it. His take on James Bond was new and fresh, but it still had the classic style and charm that fans liked. He was sure of himself, and calm, when things got tough, but he also showed feeling and weakness. This balance made his Bond stronger. He was praised by critics for giving the part new life without trying to copy the actors who had played it before him. He didn't try to look like Roger Moore or Sean Connery. He was just Pierce Brosnan. It worked. GoldenEye did very well at the box office. It made $356 million around the world, which was a huge amount of money at the time. More money was made on it than on any Bond movie from the 1980s. It was the 4th most successful movie of 1995. Both audiences and reviewers loved Brosnan's performance as James Bond. This showed that the character could still do well in a world that was changing. After the success of GoldenEye, Brosnan played James Bond again in Tomorrow Never Dies. Bond had to deal with a different kind of bad guy. This time, a media mogul, who used news stories to change the course of events around the world. With its themes of fake news and media power, the plan seemed new and even ahead of its time. But Tomorrow Never Dies had a big problem. It came out just 1 week after Titanic, which is one of the most famous movies ever. A lot of people thought Bond would be overwhelmed. Brosnan showed he could stay in the role. Still, the movie made $333 million around the world, which was a huge profit for the company. It proved that James Bond could make it in a crowded movie theater market. This movie was the first time Brosnan really mixed the old-school James Bond look with more current action. Even though his 007 was still classy and smooth, he was now faster, tougher, and more fierce. Brosnan was sure of himself in the action scenes, which were bold and exciting. Michelle Yeoh, who played Bond girl in the movie, was also different. Wei Lin, her character, wasn't just there to be saved. In every way, she was the same as Bond. She added something new to the movie, by being smart, skilled, and tough. In 1999, 2 years later, Brosnan came back for his third movie, The World Is Not Enough. The series went in a darker and more emotional way with this movie. It looked at deeper issues like trust, betrayal, and emotional pain. Sophie Marceau played the movie's main bad guy, Elektra King, who was complicated and hard to guess. She was the first main female bad guy in the James Bond movies, and her connection with Bond made the story more emotional. One of the longest and most exciting beginning scenes in Bond history was also in this movie. There is sometimes a drop in, fire in and out. Things are very different now. A race by fast boats on the River Thames. As Bond, Brosnan gave one of his best performances ever, showing both physical strength and inner conflict. He wasn't just a spy anymore. He was a man who was in pain, loss, and deception. The World Is Not Enough made $361 million around the world. Even though Denise Richards' part as a nuclear scientist got some bad reviews, it showed that Brosnan's Bond was here to stay and could keep the series going in new directions. Then came Die Another Day in 2002. It was the 20th Bond movie and the 40th anniversary of the series. People had high hopes for the movie, and it lived up to them. Die Another Day made almost $432 million around the world, making it Brosnan's most successful Bond movie. The album sold a lot of copies, and it was also a turning point. This movie made a lot of people think it went too far. People thought the show was losing its balance between style and substance, because it used too much CGI, had gadgets that didn't work, and some of the writing. As Bond, Brosnan had hit the height of his fame, but things were beginning to change behind the scenes. The team was ready for a new start. But just when it looked like Brosnan's time, as James Bond couldn't be stopped, Hollywood pulled off a surprise that changed everything. The sneaky tragedy. Pierce Brosnan thought he would be back for a fifth James Bond movie. After 4 big hits, the whole world did the same thing. He made the most money with his last movie, Die Another Day, which made almost $432 million around the world. He helped bring the series back to life with GoldenEye, and kept it going strong for almost 10 years. It looked like a fifth adventure was 007. People loved him. The news loved him. The most important thing was that the producers seemed to love him too. Both Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson, who have produced James Bond movies for a long time, praised his performance during press trips for Die Another Day in 2002. They said they were excited to work with him again. Brosnan was sure he would be back after those talks. Then something strange took place. After all the praise and good luck, there was some quiet. We have no news or changes. Like the fans, Brosnan was made to wait. He thought the studio was just taking its time with the work. It had always been a few years between Bond movies, but things were changing behind the scenes. As the company thought about a new direction for the series, Brosnan's name was quietly being pushed to the back of the line. Brosnan got the call in July 2004, while he was shooting After the Sunset in the Bahamas. That made everything different. Richard Harris, a close friend who had died 2 years before, let him stay at his house. It was a peaceful spot where I could think and remember things. Soon after, it was the site of one of the worst times in Brosnan's career. The call came from his staff. They told him talks about making the next Bond movie had stopped. Things were not going well at the office. It wasn't clear why they said that. They told him that they aren't sure what they want to do yet. They are going to call you next Thursday. Brosnan felt confused and uneasy after getting that vague message. What happened next though was even more sad. Soon after, he talked to the producers directly. Barb Broccoli was the first person to talk. She had been one of his biggest fans for years, and when other people didn't believe in him in 1994, she fought to get him sent back. Now, her voice was full of feeling. She had a sob. She told Brosnan it was over while crying. He wasn't going to come back as James Bond. Mr. Michael G. Wilson then showed up. He was cool, polite, and to the point. You did a great job as James Bond. Thank you very much, he said. That was it. Brosnan was quietly fired after 4 movies, $1 billion in box office sales, and 10 years of hard work. Later, in interviews, Brosnan used some painful words to describe how he felt. Fans were also shocked by the choice. A lot of people thought Brosnan would come back for a 5th and final movie, which would have been a good send-off. Instead, there was silence in the room. After a few months, it was announced that Daniel Craig had been chosen to play James Bond. Over the next few years, Brosnan slowly started to talk about what had happened in a more honest way. He made it clear that he wanted to go on. He joked that if they had asked, he would have played James Bond a 5th or even a 6th time. That isn't to say he was angry though. He didn't blame Craig. Instead, he told him how great his work was. His anger was directed at the people who made the choice, without giving him a fair chance to say goodbye. Later, Brosnan criticized the company, saying that their choice was dull and lacked courage. They didn't try anything new with a Bond star, who had already done well, so he thought they played it safe by fired him. A lot of his friends didn't think he was too old for the part either. He thought he still had something to offer, but Hollywood was set on its plans. For Brosnan, it showed him how quickly things can change in the movie business. You go from being praised as the perfect Bond, to being changed in a quiet way. He still decided to be polite about it. Even though the choice hurt, he didn't let it break him. After thinking about it, Brosnan said, I don't let regret come into my world. More pain and sorrow are the only things that come from it. Rather than letting the rejection define him, he used it to push himself to do better. He began to play different characters, and take on new parts to show the world, and himself that he was more than just 007. Another thing he said, was that he had to kill Bond inside to move on. Giving up the job felt like giving up a part of himself, because it had become such an important part of who he was. But when he did, a new part of the story started. Everyone was shocked by what Brosnan did next, which showed that he didn't need a dress or a license to kill to shine. Pierce Brosnan's time as James Bond left a deep mark on him when it was over. He had been known as 007 for almost 10 years. The role had made him famous and successful, but it also put pressure on him and raised standards. Brosnan had to figure out who he was without the tuxedo, the tools, and the name Bond. After the show was over, he said that he had to kill Bond in order to move on. He started by taking big risks. He played the lead role in The Matador in 2005, a dark comedy that was the exact opposite of what people thought he would do. Brosnan didn't play a noble, smooth character. Instead, he played Julian Noble, a hitman who was worn out, messy, and deeply insecure. Julian drank too much, wore loud shirts, and walked around hotel hallways in his underwear. It was nothing like Bond at all. It paid off to be brave. The performance was praised by critics who thought it was brave and funny. Brosnan was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Actor, because he was honest. For him it was the first big sign that he could stop being James Bond and do well as someone else. It also showed that he wasn't afraid to laugh at himself or question what people thought about him. In Seraphim Falls 2006, a dark thriller set after the Civil War, he played a man on the run trying to stay alive in the harsh wilderness. The movie wasn't flashy or loud, it was serious and quiet. At times, Brosnan's character didn't say much. Instead, his face and body language showed how he felt. It was an honest and moving performance that showed he could carry a movie without chase scenes or charm. At the same time, Brosnan started to take more charge of his business.